Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on.
Do you know what the most frightening thing in the world is? It's fear.
Unsettling Grandma by Kyle Keck. This happened around a year ago when I was 19, before December. I was chilling at my house when suddenly someone rang our doorbell, so I went to answer it with my father. At our door, a poor grandma around 80 stood, holding like 3 heavy bags full of groceries. She quickly spoke up and asked if we had a car, which we replied we didn't, and asked why she needed one. She said that she had a heart problem, and didn't take her medicine, and that she was now feeling dizzy. I offered to call her an ambulance, but she said she didn't want to annoy them and that she had already asked a bunch of people who just laughed her off. I had some time before my boyfriend came home from his work party, so I told her to wait a second and that I would escort her home. I grabbed a coat, some shoes, and my nearly dead phone and went with her, only telling my father that I was going out, mind you. It was around 8:30 p.m. She started telling me how she felt sick while I carried her heavy bags and told me that she lived at the bottom of a hill that we have here. So we walked together, but she stopped every few meters to take a breath as she was around 80. After about a half an hour, we got to the bottom of the hill, but suddenly she said that she lived way more up. I thought, okay, but the hill was connected to a forest and the lighting there was poor. So on the left you only saw dark forest, and on the right, a few houses. As I dragged her bags up the hill, she kept on making stops every few seconds, and the more she made them, the more I started to feel paranoid. My phone was almost dead, and there were some creepy noises that were coming from the forest. After almost another half an hour listening to her stories about her life, she started to make weird remarks. Every time I looked into the forest, she kept on telling me to not look since there was nothing there. Only animals. Not weird, right? But she kept on saying something about her rich neighbor that wanted to murder her, and he couldn't see us together or he would shoot us. The more we walked up the hill, the more sick I felt. Then we finally made a turn into a dark alley without any light, as she slowly dragged herself against the railing. She forced me to duck my head and even turn off my light, telling me that the neighbor would murder me. The closer we got to her gate, the more ruinous and abandoned it looked. Now it was around 9:35 when we got to her gate, and she chained up at the bottom. She did not allow me to use my light to release the chain, but I was so stressed out that I just did it my way anyway. The door opened, and as I peeked into her overgrown garden full of trees, not even seeing a house, it was dark and she told me to go deeper in, but carefully as it had no path and tree branches were in the way. After a few meters, suddenly a large man with an unkempt beard and hair came out, greeting us and introducing himself as her son, and he started to lay down small candles near the trees to light up our way. I felt like throwing up as I started to fear for my life, feeling like I was walking into some sacrificial ritual. After the man excused himself to grab more candles, I made an excuse to the grandma that my mom was calling me and quickly made my way towards the gate as she was trying to tell me something. But I was nearly pooping my pants right there, so I just banged the gate behind me and took off running, peeking behind myself every second as I was thinking that the man would be sprinting after me. After getting down the hill and into my own house, it was now around 10 p.m. Her house was like a 20-minute walk from my house, but her stops every second made it longer. When I got home, I realized that my father did not bother telling my mother I even went outside. So when I told her what happened, she freaked out as literally no one knew I went out for more than an hour. I mean, not even my boyfriend. The only one who knew was my father. The grandma was probably mentally ill, but damn, that was so darn creepy. It's been over a year since it happened, but the image of the candles lighting up the overgrown garden and not even seeing a small building still creeps me out. My boyfriend keeps on telling me what I did was stupid, and yeah, it was. Creepy moment. Every time I tell the story to anyone, they ask me if it really did happen, as it does sound too creepy. I think I saved my friend from getting trafficked by OK Beyond. Back in May 2024, I, a 32-year-old female, recently had been let go from a job due to company downsizing, but I was getting paid severance as well as had a good portion of money saved up in my retirement fund. So I was taking a small break before picking up another job. My best friend, a 28-year-old female, had just inherited a car from her family back in California, and she wanted to fly back there to pick it up and drive it back to New Orleans. She also missed home and wanted to spend around 2 weeks in Cali before driving back across the states for another 2 weeks, so we could take time to see some sights along the way. Since I was job-free and had never seen Cali before, she asked if I wanted to join her on the road trip, and even offered to cover my plane ticket, hotel, Airbnb stays, and the gas, so all I had to pitch in was my own food. I thought that was really overly generous, but she assured me that it literally wasn't going to put a dent in her funds since she had a ton saved up and was pretty well off. She just thought that, for one, she'd feel safer going on a road trip with a trusted friend, and plus it would be a fun friend trip for the both of us. So, I agreed. As someone who was born and raised on the East Coast, I thought Cali was a huge change and pretty amazing. I loved the fresh air and the lack of intense humidity. After collecting the car, we started driving east through Nevada, then Utah, and then ended up in Wyoming. Right after crossing the Wyoming border, we stopped for gas and some snacks. We weren't hungry enough to stop into the diner next to the gas station. My friend loves photography, though, and wanted to pull up to the Wyoming Welcome Center across the street to take a picture of the surrounding cliffs and the railroad that was cutting through the lower canyon. Let me paint you the picture. Aside from the small gas station and diner across the street and the little Welcome Center across from them with the Welcome to Wyoming sign, this area was pretty empty. It was only us parked at the Welcome Center, and about 2 cars were parked at the diner across the street. While my friend went to snap pictures of the canyon and railroad, I stayed in the car to lounge because I wasn't feeling great. I got hit with vertigo spells and migraines and was trying to rest it off. But out of nowhere, this guy sauntered up behind my friend. He didn't call out when approaching her to alert her of his presence. He only said something when she whipped around and saw him. Even though I was reclined in the passenger seat of the car, I sat up immediately. I couldn't hear what the guy was saying to her, and she was just responding as calmly as possible to what he said, but made a slight hand signal to me in the car. I grabbed the keys out of the ignition because it was the only weapon I had available, and I got out of the car. Plus, I didn't want to risk him bolting for the car and driving off with it. When I got out of the car, the guy looked surprised to see me there, and his entire demeanor seemed to grow shifty. "Hey, what's up?" I asked, direct but casual. He said he was just wondering if she could help him take a picture of him with his phone by the Welcome to Wyoming sign on the side of the road. Now, my friend or I could have said, "Nah, sorry," but you really never know how someone is going to react to being told no. He had a hand in his pocket, and I really couldn't tell if he was holding a weapon out of sight. As crazy as it seems, we agreed to help him out. While my friend played nice girl and chatted with him on the way to the sign, I followed closely behind both of them to watch him. The entire way towards the sign, the guy kept faltering in his steps like he was trying to slow down enough until we were ahead of him, but I didn't allow that. I would just stop and wait until he kept walking. He never looked back at me, but he was acting tense and fidgety. I had the car keys between my fingers just in case I might have to jab him if he lashed out at a moment's notice. I also glanced at the diner across the street to make sure we stayed in view of it, though no one ever really knows if people will actually assist you if you need help or if they'll just go into bystander mode, so I had to stay alert. I mean, after all, if anything happened, it wasn't like law enforcement would appear out of thin air to resolve an issue. The entire time we walked towards the welcome billboard, I listened to their conversation as well. The guy claimed he was in the States on a business trip with his coworkers. He said he was from Brazil, but he sounded Slavic. I'm not saying you can't be Slavic and live in Brazil. I'm just giving the details I noticed. He had a slight tan, very short dark hair, and a lean build, maybe between 5'10" and 6 feet. My friend and I are about 5'5" or 5'6", but I'm more built muscle-wise. I've been told I look a little intimidating for a woman, which perhaps was a good thing in this situation. My friend asked where his coworkers were, and he claimed they were at the diner across the street. Yet he hadn't parked his car there, which I thought was odd. His car was parked closest to the road of the Welcome Center. My vertigo and headache were completely forgotten because I was running on pure adrenaline, and everything was happening in slow motion, and my mind was racing with every possible scenario that could happen, so I could mentally prepare myself for what could happen next. When we got to the billboard, he gave my friend his phone and she took his picture in front of the billboard twice. When he came back to look at the photos and was like, "These are good. Nice, thanks so much," he then kept rambling and asking how we liked America and if we'd ever traveled outside the country before. I was becoming even more uneasy because we were just still standing there by the road and kept glancing around to see if any cars were coming. I swear, we stood there for like 5 whole minutes before he finally started walking back to his car. In a very slow shuffle, I might add. It was like he was purposefully stalling, and once again kept trying to get behind me. No dice. While his back was turned, I bent to stuff some gravel and sand into my pocket. I wanted every possible weapon at my disposal. We walked a little more, and I bent down again when he wasn't looking to pick up a fist-sized rock and just hit it slightly behind me so he couldn't see it. My mind was already preparing to rationalize beating this guy's skull in if I had to. When we got to the parking lot, my friend and I stopped, and he finally looked back and stopped before glancing back to his car and then at us. He started rambling again and making even more conversation. He didn't urge us to go back to his car, but he was once again stalling. Literally, he'd finish a topic, go quiet for a couple of seconds, and then ask us another question or bring up another topic to keep us talking. This went on for another 5 minutes, and then I finally said, "Well, we better get back on the road. We're expected somewhere." And he looked a little uneasy, before finally saying, "Oh, well, okay, thanks for the help. Goodbye." And he turned to walk very briskly to his car. My friend almost headed right for our car, but I stopped her and said, "Wait, I want to make sure he drives off first." Remember, he said his coworkers were at the diner across the street. And plus, I didn't want to run the risk of us getting into our car and being followed. The guy sat in his car for a few minutes, and my friend and I pretended we were talking just in case he was watching us, and then finally he drove off. We stayed there until we couldn't see his car anymore. Then we went back to our car, both of us shaking. Sometimes you just know something is off. My friend said she felt like the guy was going to try and traffic her, and she said, "I'm so glad I brought you with me on this trip, because holy shit, you looked like a German shepherd when you sat up in the car when I signaled you." I've never really been in a fight in my life. I've been lucky enough that I've never really had to. I've had close calls, but I've always managed to de-escalate a situation before it got physical, and perhaps this was yet another one of those times. But I had never been more prepared to kill someone if it meant my friend and I could get out of there with our lives intact. I had mentally prepared myself to do the unthinkable. I even imagined tossing that guy off the cliff if I had to. The whole thing was pretty scary. And needless to say, we both bought ourselves some mace at the next stop. We didn't run into any further problems on our trip, and I'll never forget all the details that happened with that encounter. Something was just off about the way that guy was acting towards us. Who knows? Maybe he was scared of us, or me after I stepped out of the car and thought we were about to Thelma and Louise his ass. That's fine by me. I'd rather a man think twice out of fear before preying on a woman. All that being said, you go on a road trip, try to have someone with you if possible. And stay alert when you stop anywhere. Keep aware of your surroundings. Keep an eye on the threat, and be prepared to use anything you can at your disposal. Falling Lights by Greg D. This is a series of events that happened about 8 years ago. I was about 25 years old and was living by myself in a large mobile home on about 2 acres out in the country. I was working at a carpet mill and worked second shift, so I always got home from work after midnight. The mobile home was large and very nice. My bedroom was on one end of the trailer, which was raised up from the living room floor about 4 feet. At the end of my bedroom was a master bathroom that had a whirlpool bath, a separate shower, and his and her double sinks. Above the sinks were decorative lighting fixtures. The best way to describe those is to compare them to a lowered ceiling that has the removable panels that fit into tracks. The lights above the bathroom sinks also had removable panels that were rectangular and opaque, so the light would shine through, and they hung from wooden rectangular tracks. They were kind of like suspended ceiling tiles, but were almost clear. On occasions, I would come home from work and those panels would have fallen from the ceiling to the sinks or on the floor. And there was no way they could have just fallen out of the tracks. I know when I would have to change light bulbs, you had to lift the panels and get them just at the right angle to even get them out. The first time or two that happened, I didn't think much of it until another event happened that really shook me up. Trailer bedrooms are usually fairly small, and I had a large bed. My bed was positioned about 4 inches away from the north wall of the room. Between the bed and the wall, I had a large plate mirror that just sat on the floor. It was about 3 feet by 4 feet and about a ½ inch thick, so it was pretty heavy. I came home from work one night and the mirror was shattered. Even if the mirror were pushed from the wall to the bed, it would only have gone 4 inches and couldn't have shattered. The light panels dropping from the ceiling happened several more times after the mirror incident, and shortly after that, I had spooked myself into moving to another place. I haven't had any paranormal things happen to me since, which makes me believe that the trailer or the property it was on was somehow in tune with the supernatural world. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like me to narrate, email it to unclejosh.truescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. And we're at that time of year again. If you have a true scary Halloween story, please send it my way. It's starting early this year. Already have a couple of stories that have been submitted, so thank you to those of you who have. But I would love to have your stories looking for a great Halloween extravaganza this year. If you're catching this on YouTube and you like what you saw or heard, give the video a thumbs up. Maybe leave a comment, let me know what you thought of the stories, and if you're not a subscriber, why not be a subscriber too while you're at it? If you'd like to support what I'm doing a step further, find a link to my Patreon page in the description, or consider getting some Uncle Josh and Campfire Crew merchandise. There's a link to my TeePublic storefront in the description as well. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.